right. So, welcome to another podcast. I'm here with Drew
Hello.
Grossmann,
That's me.
the one, the only. And I asked him to be on this podcast because he is the author of a brand new book that is coming out soon. The title of which is The Universe Does Not Speak English. And it is a book that delves into spirituality, the body, the mind, and the spirit. And Drew has been a good friend of mine for a long while now. And I hope that we can discuss the book. So, Drew, just give me a broad overview. What is the book about?
Well, I think the book is basically self-explanatory, at least in the title. You know, the universe doesn't speak English. To me, it means that there's way more than meets the physical eye or the sensations, especially. And the book is broken out into 3 separate pieces, like you said. So part 1 is the mind, part 2 is the body, and then part 3 is the soul. And it's my belief and understanding that each piece specifically has functionality for a specific purpose, that being dimensionality. So, for instance, the body...
What is that? What is dimensionality? You got to fill me in.
Let's say the body, right, exists in the 3rd dimension. The mind exists in the 4th dimension. The soul exists in the 5th dimension.
Okay. All right. Go on.
So, the way the pieces fit together are... First, the mind in many of today's society, and maybe that's speaking a little bit broadly, the observed mind wants to take over and act as the piece that dictates what's occurring. So the ego, or whatever you want to say, takes all the pieces of sensory information and makes it real. So the first part of the book dives into separating the mind from itself. So the inner from the outer, and then taking both of those pieces and allowing you to become the observer of both. So now you've separated yourself completely from the mind. The mind controls what goes into the body through, food, water, but also thoughts, all the senses. So when we can separate ourselves from the mind, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, when we separate ourselves from the mind, we can then control what goes into our body. And like I said, that's not just physical things. Those are also mental things. Now, because the body functions in a dualistic manner, it's the meeting point between the mind and the soul. The organs also have dualistic functionality. The body itself can communicate. So when we control the mind, we can then control what gets placed in the body. Once the body is cleansed from a spiritual and physical dualistic perspective, we can feel then into the subtleties of the soul. When the soul gets felt, now we can trace those back without needing to place a definitional aspect on them from the mind. And instead of going, this is the conclusion of the book, instead of going from mind to body to soul, which everyone will say mind, body, soul, we flip it and we can feel the soul first, track it through the body, and then allow it to come out through the mind. So it goes soul, body, mind. So it's more of an inside out as opposed to outside in.
Wow. All right. And so that's a very interesting take on kind of, mind, body, soul, but it's in reverse, because what you're saying is that the soul, I want to make sure I'm understanding you, the soul is the intersection between, no, I didn't get it. Hold on. Let me think for a second here. So the soul is through the body and the mind, but you can pick up on it first in the soul. How do you do it?
So
let me back up a little bit. Because I have a curiosity.
Yeah.
So the title of the book,
yeah.
It's pretty, I love the title of the book.
Thank you.
Tell me, what is where was that inspiration for that from? Before we dive even further into it.
Yeah. So the inspiration comes from a couple different pieces and places. The original title for the book was actually something different, but over time, and I don't want to necessarily spoil that title because I might use it in another piece.
Sure. Yeah.
It actually, I'll tell you because it's actually part of this thing. The book is 3 pieces, or 3 parts at this point, and it originally started only as a mind book, right? So it was only how to get yourself out of your own mind. So the name of the original book that I had started to write before it became 3 parts and an entire process and series was How to Lose Your Mind. So it started How to Lose Your Mind, and eventually...
Another great title for a book.
Well, yeah. Well, it could still be coming, but, I didn't want to put out there the manifestational powers of someone reading this book and losing their mind in a sensible way. The pun probably would have been misconstrued, and I didn't really want to place that energy and be responsible for putting that out in the world.
Yeah, makes sense.
But going back to your original question, how to lose your mind. Oh, sorry. Let me backtrack. Not how to lose your mind.
Not how to lose your mind.
Right, exactly. Now I'm losing my mind.
The universe does not speak English.
Right. The universe doesn't speak English.
Yeah.
That came about through, this observed candidacy of seeing others wanting things to be the certain way that they feel they should be in the world, and doing it through ways that they don't necessarily understand, aren't the greatest and highest energetic way to do it. So for instance, placing prayer, writing prayer, doing things that have spoken word, it's not the way to communicate, right? The universe doesn't have a set language that it understands at the base of the language. The root of the language, maybe the vibration of it is. But to really set it and hit home to say the universe doesn't speak English, it's not something that you can just, communicate with through the words and the lexicon that you and I most frequently communicate with.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So tell me more about the vibrations. How do the vibrations work?
So vibrations are the silence that occurs when there is no word, right? We can say words also have vibration and carry certain aspects, which goes back to the etymology and goes back to different pieces of them. But the universe communicates through vibration, right? Everything is vibrating. You and I are vibrating. The chair we're sitting on is vibrating.
Vibrations all bound. We were making some vibrations earlier.
Sure.
Some music. Anyways.
Yeah, music is a vibration. Everything is vibrating.
Yeah. And
at a certain level, if quantum theory is correct, then everything is also balanced and in harmony and in peace with each other. So the universe, or the united verse, is actually this harmonic thing that's occurring. Think about your body. It has organs, and you're in tune. You're getting in tune with people. All these things, if you hit a tuning fork that has the same hertz or frequency next and hold it next to another one that's the same, it'll start vibrating at that harmonic as well. So the vibrations of feeling others and their harmonic energies is really what it comes down to. And that communication is not just through the physical senses of seeing something, because our senses are also very limited. It's on a different plateau as well, in a different plane, in order to physically manifest something that is not necessarily tangible on this dimension.
Wow, that's so beautiful, Drew. There's so much depth to what you're talking about. I'm right on the surface. I'm right on the surface of all of the universe's vibrations, I feel like. How would I begin going down a pathway to separate my mind from my soul from my mind, and then my body from my mind, or my body from my soul, and then reach the soul? How do I find the soul first? Because I know that I'm going back to what you were talking about at the beginning of what the book is about. It's how would I go about, or how would a listener or reader go about finding the soul?
So I think the best way to do this is not necessarily going to seek the soul, right? It's usually that something that's searched for will either hide or run, or, there's this thing again with the dictation of, I'll know it when I see it versus I'll see it when I know it. Maybe that's not the right way to, right? It's
okay.
But let's say believe it. I'll see it when I believe it versus I'll believe it when I
people say I
right?
believe it when I see it. That's the idiom, right?
Right.
But you're saying it's wrong, or it's just not what you're presenting.
It's not the full story, let's say, right?
And so so go on. So how do how do you believe it and then you see it?
By allowing and by surrendering. So let's go back and like this might be too esoteric for some listeners. So like let's go back and bring it back to tangibility.
Yeah.
Right. So tangibility in the common sense would be, I see it, I can touch it, it's real. So let's play with that for a second.
Yeah.
All right. And so like in this space, we're talking about the mind perceiving things through the five senses. So touch is the most tangible aspect of actually being able to reach out and grab something, which factually is also the first sense that becomes developed around 8 weeks in embryo.
Okay.
So
fascinating.
When we're reaching out and grabbing something and tangibly feeling it, the mind has a sense of ease about it to kind of grasp it, more or less, with the pun intended there. So, an easy exercise to just witness that not necessarily everything you know is real or occurring outside of you is to like take any word, like take a word, figure out a word that's like around here even, like, like candle.
Candle. Almost knocked over candle there.
So candle, I say the word or you read the word. All right,
Take the word candle.
Yeah, so this is called the word game, and it's in the book. It's, I think, one of the first exercises that I put out because it's very, very potent. Let's take the word candle. The word game, let's backtrack for one more second. The rules of the word game are very simple. I'm going to show you a word, and I don't want you to think of the image or feeling or taste or sensations associated with this word.
Okay.
Okay?
Just the word.
Just the word.
Okay.
So if I were to say the word candle, or write it down and say, don't think of this word, flip the page, you look at it.
Damn it, I'm thinking about candle.
Yeah, and like, what are you thinking about candle?
I think about a little flame, think about smells usually.
Sure.
I'm thinking about the shape. It's like cylindrical.
Heat, all these different things that are externally like felt of this, right?
Yeah.
And I would do it again and I say like bath or cat, mountain, volcano, all these different words have associated meanings to them. That's part one. Okay, so it's pretty not easy to, not think of the word. I would
Correct.
surmise.
It's not easy to not think of the word. I agree.
So part two, we go back and do this whole exercise again, but just changing one thing. Now, one thing is language. So if I show you the same word again in a completely different language that you're not keen to, that you don't have an automatic thesaurus that you've been processing for the last decades, you're going to look at it and there's not going to be that immediate hit, right? There's not a pattern recognition of the symbols that are placed in a specific way that mean something and relate to something that's outside of you that isn't real.
Yeah.
Does this make sense?
Yeah. If I don't have any context for the word, then it means nothing. It's just letters or just symbols on a page.
Undefined.
Yeah,
it'll be undefined. So whether it's a Chinese character or whether it's a whole string of other letters in a completely different like Cyrillic language, it's not going to come up in the mind as something that it can connect to those essential feelings that you're sensing, right? You're sensing the cylindricalness and the heat and everything else. But for someone who does have that downloaded in their thesaurical brain and the lexicon is there, they would look at it and have a visceral response to it. So what is that telling us? It's telling us that the thing that's outside is not actually within us, and it's not fully known either. It represents something through a pattern of symbols, but it's not actually fully real and doesn't need to be taken as fully real either in that moment.
So what do I do with this information?
So the best way to use this information is to just notice the fact that when we're seeing something, it's just not, it's representing something, but it might also not be. Not totally taking it as true and real at face value every single time that we see something. Right?
Yeah.
So this is like the starting to pull the outer from the inner and say, okay, like I'm looking at what I'm looking at and I'm observing myself seeing this thing before I take it in as immediately like glued together.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. So it's starting to question when we see things, is that what we're really seeing?
Sure, you could put it that way. I wouldn't put it as like as on the nose as like am I actually seeing that? I think you are seeing that, but to the extent that the word or something is representative of it could be a little bit more discerning. So let's go back one more time, and I'll bring this like a little bit further around for everybody.
Okay.
So
I feel like this is like high level spiritual practice right now.
Well, this is just mine. This is only part one, man.
Oh my gosh.
Hold on.
I can't even imagine getting into the further parts.
Let's just talk for a second about words. Okay, we're talking about words. Let's talk a little bit more.
Let's talk about words.
When words are defined, they're defined by the words.
Correct.
Okay. And definitionally speaking, the one rule that we all learn in grade school is that a word can't define itself. Right? That's like the one rule.
That is what they tell us.
It can't self-define. Okay. Which self-definition of like a self-defining thing is meta. Like that would be the word, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Metacognition.
Well,
I know, I'm just joking.
Anything.
Yeah, sorry.
So, but if we were to look at a definitional string, like let's say we're defining candle, or we're defining dog, or we're defining camera, we take that word, string out the definition of whatever the sentence is that's placing that word in there.
Yeah.
If we continue to take a word from that definitional string and move it down and down and down and down, if we take A equals B equals C, A equals C, but we put this out into basically an infinite loop, we'll find that eventually that word is going to appear in another string at some point in time.
Yes.
Right?
I agree.
So if we extrapolate this, that means that all words are self-defining. There's no word that's not self-defining.
Right. Yeah, when we extrapolate it out far enough. Yeah.
All made up.
Yeah.
So the tree that I'm talking about necessarily isn't the same tree that you are witnessing in your third eye or imagination that I'm saying. Right? So there's an incompleteness of clarity when we get words across to each other. Right? So it's not necessarily false, but it's also not necessarily true anything that's happening. If we extrapolate that to the senses, to the right, it's not necessarily fully clear.
Yeah.
And that's the starting of separating the mind from itself.
Okay. And so I'm beginning to understand. It feels complex for me. Maybe I just haven't been thinking about it in the way that you have, obviously. But so that's the mind. We're starting to separate out that, because basically what you're saying is like we each have this individualized experience, and in order to communicate that to another person or communicate that at all, what we communicate in words is only 5% or less. I'm just using a random number.
True.
Not saying it's it's that number exactly. So what do we let me think here. So Drew, what do we do next?
So I can answer the question that you were probably thinking.
Okay, what was the question?
So the answer.
What's the question and what's the answer?
The question.
I just want you to interview yourself.
The question would probably be, how do we best communicate with each other what's happening inside of us if words are not doing it?
That is the question, yeah.
Well, that's the answer of the book, which is the universe doesn't speak English. And the true answer is through evoking feeling. So,
and is that the body?
I would say the body is the conduit of the feeling. There's emotion and there's feeling. And I believe those are two different things.
You said motion or emotion?
Emotion.
Okay, so there's emotion and then there's the feeling.
The feeling.
And the feeling comes from the soul into the body and then erupts in the mind's eye where we try and describe it.
Defined by the mind.
Defined by the mind.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because the mind is trying to make sense of it.
Yes, the mind is trying to define it.
Okay.
The mind needs to define things in order for it to have a sense of self.
And why is that important to the self? Or
for
the
survival.
mind? For survival.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me more about that.
Without a sense of self, then there would be no... I mean, the mind is driven by these instinctual habits and patterns.
Okay.
So if there's no sense of self, then there is no there's no survival instinct, right? It's the taming of that survival instinct that gives one the clarity to release a lot of these things that are seen and inherent within a lot of society as well.
Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, like ashrams.
Okay. All right. Makes sense.
But if we go back, I want to answer this, like the question that was not question. The one of the points of the universe is also that nothing exists outside of yourself. Everything is a conversation with yourself internally, always. And that internal conversation needs not be defined.
Correct. Yep.
Right? Like the sound of rain needs no translation is a quote from Alan Watts, and it's like the opening quote from the book. And it's just like, yeah, like I don't need to know. I don't need to, like, the sound of rain needs no translation, you know?
It just is.
It's just known. It's just is. You know, it just is. Yeah. There's wisdom, knowledge, and truth, or knowledge, wisdom, and truth. And I believe those are also like an upscaling of different forms of what is. So knowledge is like information, right?
Okay.
And there's a whole path we can go on there with like how the modern hunter-gatherers are now information gatherers, and why the how do I want to say that? Like, why there's so much...
Say it. Rip it into it. Rip it open, dude. I know you want to.
Why the intent of so much of society is to gain information that means nothing and subverts anything. So like social media, like all the death scrolling, all of that is just it's their survival instinct that's left over from hunting and gathering. And now individuals are just
because we just want to gather information.
Yes. It's like the gathering. There's a need of like some sense of self, right? That like is instinctual, built into genetic code or whatever you want to say. But because you can go shopping at the supermarket to get everything you need, someone else has already gotten it for you, which we can also talk about food, and it's a whole different, like no one's really touched the food, and it's a whole different thing. The sense of completion is left open. So there needs to be some gathering for survival purposes. And that gathering is this useless, like...
Cat memes.
Yes. Cat memes and...
Who needs more cat memes? Nobody, but we seem to be collecting them.
Yes.
As a society.
Right. And the question is why, and that's my answer.
Whoa. Okay. I want to deviate a little bit. I want to go in a different direction here. Okay. So, Drew, why is it so important for you to share this with people?
That's a good question. To answer, I can give you, one of the most relevant things of my life that I've come back to understanding. So when I was young, I used to have a lot of lucid dreams. And there's one dream in particular. A lucid dream is when you wake up in the dream and you're still dreaming and you have control and full agency over the dream. And the lucid dream that is most relevant to me in my life and kind of gave me like, didn't give it to me, like it was just sitting in the background for a while. One of those things that like, wow, that was a very, very lucid experience that I had. And thinking back, it makes a lot of sense. So the dream was, I was just walking around my elementary school playground, hanging out with some friends, became lucid. And in this particular moment, I chose the path of not like flying, not like driving a car, doing whatever I would want to do like at that age. I just turned to the person next to me and I just told them that it was a dream. And I like started waking everyone else up in the dream. Yeah. And it was a very interesting experience to have that happen. Quite meta and interesting.
So you were in a dream. You woke up in the dream at the playground. You started telling the other children about the dream that they were in, and they began waking up from their dreams.
In my dream.
In your dream.
I don't know about in their dreams, but in my dream.
Right.
So at the end, everyone had their own agency over this dream, and it was like, yeah, it was very, very interesting.
And so where does that lead to you wanting to share this with the world?
I think it's important to understand, first of all, like, well, that's the dream. That's kind of like the prophecy, I would say, right?
Oh, okay.
That's like dialing it back to like a very innocent, childlike drew,
Mm-hmm.
I think that was always kind of something that was like, oh, like, let me help. If I know something that others don't know, how can I use my skills to better get them also like along the path here, or at least understanding the things that that I think that I can help with. Yeah, using all the different resources at my will.
Wow. And so that's why you need to wake others up.
I don't need. So the thing is like not about waking anyone else up.
Oh, okay.
I've learned over the course of my life that I can't have anyone do anything. There's nothing that I can control from anyone else's perspective. And if I try to, it actually becomes more of a slingshot in the opposite direction for me. So it's not about waking others up. It's not about having others join me on the path. It's literally just putting out information. Like, it's like the FedEx guy. He's delivering you your Amazon packet, or Amazon, right? Like, I'm just mailman. I just here's like some mail and like whatever, if it happens, it happens. And it's interesting, like I'll be in a workshop or I'll have a retreat and people will be at different stages of their lives and different stages of their spiritual development, of their mental awareness and all other aspects that come along with it. And so things that I say will hit different people at different times. So even in like reading the book, first time you read the book, you might get something out of it. But second time you read the book, you might see something that you didn't notice the first time because you're further down the path than you were the last time. And, that's the same thing with, 10, 20, 50, who it doesn't matter. Everyone will light up at different parts depending on what I say based on where they are. It's not up to me to get everyone to the finish line either. I can't do that because everything is inside.
Inside the mind, the body,
everything's
the soul.
Everything's inside the
vessel.
Let's put it this way.
I'm lost a little bit. I'm lost.
Let me go back for a second.
You gotta fill me in. Keep going, because I'm fascinated, but I'm also like, what are we talking about?
This is what we're talking about, Michael. The soul is a fifth dimensional element.
Okay. Yes.
The body is a third dimensional.
Clear.
Material. Time is a fourth dimensional thing.
Time. Yep. Okay.
Okay. And the mind is in the fourth dimension.
Okay.
If we imagine a point, the first dimension, it's just a point. It's a marker.
Yeah.
It cannot exist. It doesn't really exist.
Yeah. Sorry.
I'm boring you.
No, you're not boring me. My mind is like.
No, this is good. The yawning is actually like, it's a sign that your brain is making new neural connections.
Yeah.
So, first dimension is a point.
You're not boring me. It's truly like, holy shit. I'm trying. My mind is kind of expanding here. I'm like, whoa. Okay.
First dimension is a point.
Yeah.
Second dimension is a line because we would draw a straight line between 2 points.
Yeah.
Third dimension has depth.
Okay.
So X, Y, and Z axis.
Yeah.
Fourth dimension is time. Fifth dimension encompasses that time and that axis back into a point.
Okay.
So it would take a timeline.
Yeah. And it
collapses it back so it can observe the entire timeline as a point again.
Okay.
So that's the soul.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And then are each of us our own little points of fifth dimensionality?
Yes.
And then how are we interwoven? Is this a sixth dimension, or are we connected all in the fifth dimension, or is the sixth dimension the connection of those points, just as the second dimension is the connection of the first dimension?
Exactly. Yeah, there's soul families and there's soul clusters, and it goes up and up. So if you've met someone that reminds you of somebody else, chances are potentially that they share a cluster of energetic dimensionality on higher plane than
with us. Or with someone that you know.
With someone that you know, yeah.
So interesting. Okay,
right.
Gotcha.
But if you think about it like this, Michael, so, okay, let's go back to dimensionality, and like I'm going to work through this a little bit more with you. By the way, everything is in the book, and it's laid out way more neatly.
You guys got to buy this book and read this book. It is fascinating.
So third dimension is X, Y, and Z, okay? So like we said, like there needs to be mass. There needs to be space. There needs to be, for the fourth dimension, some type of energy, right? If it was a only third dimension, we would just see a picture, and that would be it. But for us to move around and to grasp ideas and grow things and all this other stuff, even like nature, there needs to be a fourth dimension. Where's I going with this?
Your
Wait, what was I
dimensionality.
talking about this for? Yes, okay. So
I hope
let's-
you remember, because I certainly don't.
so physical and spiritual planes
Yeah.
exist.
Yes,
Yes,
they
and
do.
they communicate through the fourth dimension, right? We said like,
Yeah.
okay. So everything that exists in the physical does not exist in the spiritual.
Okay, so
Okay.
they're opposites.
More like knots.
They're not. Okay.
They're knots, if we're logically speaking, not opposites.
They're not opposites.
But, you know, like, so if matter exists, space exists, time exists, all of that doesn't exist in the spiritual plane.
Okay.
So that's how things can happen instantly. Like, think about it. I like to analogize it to in the Matrix when they're in that white space of nothing and they can just, we need guns. Like all the guns show up. It's like that, where like you think it and it's already there. But because time doesn't exist, the thought is already behind the process, potentially, sometimes.
Right.
Right?
Because we are flowing through this spiritual plane, and that is disconnected from time and space.
It's above it. So everything is a point. So if you and I were both souls in the fifth dimension trying to communicate with each other, we would either pass through each other or we wouldn't be able to actually do anything. So the soul manifests itself on a plane that allows for tangibility, and time plus, so fourth dimension plus third dimension, time plus mass equals friction.
Okay.
Right? So for me to be able to like touch you means that there's friction there, so I can communicate with you, thereby creating lessons, creating friction, which create feelings, which creates lessons, then gets transmitted back up.
Back up through the body into the mind.
Up into the soul. The mind is only capturing certain things here. The soul is the thing that's evolving.
Okay. So wait,
Does
if
that
I
make
touch
sense?
you here,
Yeah.
if I grab your arm, there's friction
Yeah.
in space-time.
There's heat.
Uh-huh.
There's feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then?
So because of that, you and I can interact and we can work through whatever karma or whatever like things that we would like to, because we can actually engage with each other, create some emotion, some feeling, and then allow that to be uplinked back to the soul.
And now, are there any tangible benefits of doing that? Like, are there tangible benefits of doing this work that you're talking about?
Yeah, there definitely are.
What are they?
Well, if you understand this work,
which I clearly do not. I'm like so lost, but I'll get it.
I think it'll be laid out
once I read the book.
Once you see the book.
Once I finish the book.
Once you finish it.
I read an old copy of it.
Yes. So there's certain things to understand. One of them is vibration. Obviously, that's the whole name of the book. And there are different vibrations. Like there are different hertzes, just like you would find on a piano or anything else. Understanding this work means that the higher your vibration is, the more in tune you are with the essence of communicating a clear channel between what it is that's happening in the higher dimension and this dimension.
And the higher dimension has the power.
Yes.
In order to deliver anything at any point, because it operates above the fourth dimension, the third dimension.
That's correct.
Okay, I see. So we're trying to raise our vibration to the level of the universe's vibration.
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so how does this relate to like the levels of consciousness? That's something I'm more familiar with, is like the levels of like, you know, there's like anger down low, and then there's like, then up at the top is like love, right?
Yeah, up at the top is also known as serenity of being, which is like more blissful, like nirvana, I would say. Like love, yes, love is also up there, but love can actually be felt. This like serenity of being is like a transcended emotional feeling. Like it's not actually capable of being felt in a physical body. If you look at this one scale called the emotional tone scale, the highest vibration you can have is playing games.
What does this mean? What does that mean, playing games?
Playing games.
Like mind games? Or like
you can
baseball?
toss a ball, yeah.
Huh.
Playing any game makes it so that this outer world is actually like not so difficult, let's say, right? The interesting thing to note is that the difference between living and dying is the difference between having a strong interest in something or being conservative about it.
What? The difference between living and dying is the difference between having a strong interest in something or being conservative about it?
Yeah, conservatism versus strong interest.
What is conservatism?
Conservatism is wanting things to stay the same, which goes against the inherent nature of the universe.
And then having a strong interest in something
is a growth mentality, is wanting to take in more and is wanting to grow towards something. Right? So that's the difference. If you want something to stay the same and you're trying to hold on to something, you're inherently going against the spiritual laws of nature and the universe, which means that you're actually weathering yourself to get that. Like if you think of a rock or a boulder that like sits in the middle of a river, it'll eventually become eroded. But if it's light enough to go with the river, it'll flow and the molecules of the water won't actually erode it as heavily or as hard.
And so the universe does have a flow? Like is it playing a sacred song above us all? Is that what you mean?
It is, yeah. Everything is even the earth has a specific vibration called the Schumann resonance.
What? Tell me more about the Schumann resonance.
Schumann resonance
Schumann.
Schumann.
Oh, Schumann. Okay.
Discovered by
Schumann.
I thought
you said Schumann.
So it's 7.83 hertz.
7.83 hertz?
Yes.
That's very low.
It is very low, but you know that brain waves are also very low.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so like delta waves.
Alpha, beta, waves. Gamma, delta. Yeah.
Okay.
And so what's interesting is that the Schumann resonance is actually the midpoint between the alpha and theta waves.
Okay.
So it's right in the middle of everything. But yeah, the earth is vibrating at a certain frequency. It's also giving off electromagnetic fields. It has an abundance of electrons. So it's actually a net negative sphere.
And what does this mean for all of us on Earth?
Well, humans especially, the reactive process of oxygen creates these free radicals in the body. So humans can have a net positive charge, which can cause a lot of problems, which is why you hear a lot about free radicals, which is actually just, it's called an oxygen species or something, like a reactive oxygen species in chemistry. But by grounding or touching your bare feet to the earth, you're actually discharging or allowing the negative electrons to come up to bond back together with these oxygen species that need an extra electron. So you're actually balancing out all the free radicals that can cause damage to the body. Yeah.
And what kind? So let's talking about the body. Now that we're getting into the body, so we glanced over the mind a little bit. We went into it a little bit. I don't know if I fully grasped it, but let's go into the body. What's something that you would want people to take away from the body section of your book? Like, what is one insight that might lead someone to get closer to speaking the language of the universe?
That's a great question. Yeah, there's many parts of the body. Like, so some of the sections within the body part, it covers water. Water is vibrating as well, right? Your body is made up of 80% water.
A lot of water.
So basically, you're just a big water blob that has some crystals in it, some minerals, right? Water and minerals is what makes you up. This is going to delve into the spiritual section for a second, but bear with me.
Yeah.
If you are light and your body is water and it has some crystals in it, then the light that's bearing out of your body is passing through water that has certain refractions in it. And those refractions are what create your aura.
Whoa. That's so cool. Holy fuck.
Yeah, so let's go back to the water. So water, and this is more touching on spiritual, but we're already here, so we might as well.
That's fine.
I don't want to leave a cliffhanger here. Water is vibrating at specific frequencies just like everything else. It's also been proven that the mind can affect the environment under which it is. This would be like, for the body example, epigenetics is a term that basically means that the environment can be shifted and it can change the genetic outcome of certain events within your genome. We don't have to go too deep into it, but the main factor is that the mind controls environmental factors in the body. Depending on the environment, it affects certain things. Mind also can control certain vibrations then. These vibrations can affect things outside, just like a tuning fork. So if we take Water, for instance, the vibration of water can be affected by the mind.
Of the water within our body.
And outside.
Okay.
But we can say like
this is boggling
outside. This is going to be soul as well, but
so you're saying we have the power to control water's vibration with our mind?
Yes.
Is this proven?
Yes. Yes.
Explain.
There's a Japanese scientist. His name was Masaru Emoto. He did a bunch of experiments on water and wrote multiple books on it. Mm-hmm. But without getting too deep into the experiments, we can. So water has specific vibrations depending upon, this is the kicker right here. This is like the asterisk part of the entire thing to like highlight. Depending on the bond angle of the hydrogen to the oxygen, it's H2O, so there's 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. Depending on the bond angle, if you imagine like a wishbone from a chicken or something, mm-hmm. or just trying to break something open, the wider the bond angle, the easier it is to break off the pieces. Yeah. So a very, very tight bond angle makes it very hard for the body to actually take away the 2 oxygens from the hydrogen, or the 2 hydrogens from the oxygen, right?
Yeah.
But if it's open further, then it's much easier. You can become more hydrated, which just means the hydrogen. The oxygen is just a carrier. Like the hydrogen is the quickest, it's the first element in the periodic table.
Yeah.
It's the quickest one, it's hardest to capture. So the oxygen has to carry it to the body then needs to break it apart in this process. Okay. Depending on the bond angle that you can affect.
The bond angle of how the hydrogen is attached to the oxygen.
Yes.
Okay, if I'm following.
Yes, you can change the bond angle.
Okay.
That bond angle will allow you to become more hydrated.
With the mind.
With the mind, but also through the heart, right?
Right.
So this is one of those uplinks where it's like soul, body, mind, like you really are channeling things. So let's talk about there's certain vibrations of food. Yeah. Some food is still alive when you eat it. Some food is not. If you put a potato in a cupboard for 3 weeks, it's going to start sprouting because it's actually alive. Yeah. Put a piece of meat in the cupboard. Not the same. It
is not the same.
Yeah. You are what you eat. There's different vibrations of food that have vibrations already inputted from other minds, like
processed food?
Processed food, but mainly like animal products sometimes, right, if they're not raised in the proper way. Right. Hence.
So that's why it's better to eat things that are made with kindness.
Yeah, I would say it's better to eat things that are produced with loving hands. Yeah. Same way that mass-produced piece of bread is not going to taste the same as a local artisan bread. Right. It's made with love.
It's made with love.
And that's a real thing, just like you said.
Wow. So the love. So, and maybe that's why it's become so common a phrase to say, "Oh, I made this with love. That's why it tastes so good." But actually, that's why
it's made with heart through thought. Yeah, with thought through heart, whatever you want to say. Yes, it's made with love. And that love emanates at a higher vibration.
And then I guess I'm always just thinking people want to benefit from conversations like these. And this is really fascinating to me. So if I am trying to better my body, eat better foods, does it have an impact if I am grateful for my food? If I create a gratitude practice of love, and I just infuse the food before I eat it with my love, and as I eat it, does that make it easier to digest?
100%. Because the food is actually just water and minerals too, right?
Everything's water and minerals.
Everything's water. Everything is basically water.
Okay.
I mean, at least for an edible purpose, right?
Yeah, edible. Yeah.
Yeah, so it makes it easier to digest, which is actually, if you want to get even more highlighted,
I don't want to get more.
You want to brain blast from this one.
Give me the brain blast.
That is the actual history. I want to say etymology. It's the history of saying grace over food. Why do we say grace over food? It's actually to raise the vibration of the food so it's easier for our bodies to take in the nutrients.
And what is the origin of that?
The origin of saying grace?
Yeah.
It's the same way of placing the gratitude back into the food, raising the vibration.
I gotcha.
There's also an element of being present with the food itself. Also gives you more of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if you're really with your food, with your body, then the body reacts to such activities.
Yes, in harmonious, like in more harmony, let's
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
right?
Oh my goodness, Drew. Okay, so that's a little tidbit about the body.
Oh, there's way more to go. There's way more to go on with the body, but yeah, that's a tidbit. I can tell you that Emoto, just like you can look up his experiments and all of his published works, but he took, yeah, I mean, he took water and from the same sample would subject it to different emotions through thoughts. He would write words on um, different
Cards,
different cards. He put it on
jars.
them, play different music,
Huh.
bunch of different things. Then he would take that water, he would freeze it and look it under a microscope, and the crystalline structures of the water would differentiate based upon what music he played, whether it was containing a high tone, low tone, same with the words, same with the thoughts. And these experiments have also been conducted through food sitting on people's tables,
Uh-huh.
like, or through growing plants.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this I can't wait to read the rest of the book then, because this is fascinating, and
Yeah.
and I'm curious. Now we've gone through a little bit of the mind, a little bit of the body. I want to dive into the soul a little bit. Like, what is the soul, Drew?
Well, I think that's a question not for
Question not for you.
that's kind of
It's
like,
like that's too far. That's the
that's
point of the book. You're not supposed to ask.
right. I think the soul is the observer. That's the best answer I have.
Mm,
The soul is the observer. So if you have a thought, if you think a thought, it can't be you because you observed it, right? Everything that's observable is not you. So by process of elimination, the only thing that's left is the one observing, and that's the soul.
Thank you for answering that. Now I'm curious, how do we engage? Are we in control of our soul? Is it true what they say that if we treat people badly, then we'll go to hell? Our soul will be damned for millions of years? Like, what is the reality of the soul?
Well, the reality of heaven and hell is that they both exist currently on this plane.
Ooh, spicy.
So depending on
Like we create our own heaven and hell.
you're creating your own heaven and hell.
Yeah.
If you follow any Buddhist or Hindu lineages, then there's a cycle of samsara, which means that karma affects the rebirth and reincarnation cycle. So depending on how aligned you are, what gives light versus what takes it away, you can have repercussion. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad or good. It depends on the observer, but also, you know, suffering is also an illusion because it's observed.
And so the soul is the observer. So, but I feel like you didn't answer my second question, though, of do we have control over the soul?
The soul has a specific journey set out for itself at the beginning.
Okay.
So
it's on a journey. We engage with the soul, but we aren't our souls.
you at the deepest level are your soul. The mind is what wants to control the sense of ego and the sense of separation from oneness.
And do you believe that we are all oneness?
At a certain level, we're all a refraction of the same exact thing, yes. So I'm having a conversation with myself at a certain dimensional level here.
Sure.
Right? And I think that's the way to look at life the best. And if there is a lesson here, it would be that everyone is me and I am everyone, but at the same time, they're all having their own experiences so I can have mine. So I don't need to be on stage at the concert because that individual is on stage at the concert, experiencing it for me at a higher dimension. So this whole sense of FOMO, of like missing out, is actually quelled by the fact that I can think, or not even think, that I know that someone else is experiencing the thing for me at the highest level, right? So, the soul, to answer the question more deeper, at the fifth dimension, everything's a point.
Yeah.
This explains like deja vu.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The soul knows. So the intuition that comes through the body And a gut reaction is actually the soul engaging with the fact in the process that this is either the right thing or the wrong thing to do in this moment. And when we go against it, that those processes can be tuned out. When we go with it, they kind of get more amplified.
And is it always advantageous to go with the direction of our soul? Do we have a choice in it?
We do have a choice. That's what creates free will.
So we do have free will.
There's a certain sense of free will that we do have. Okay. There are checkpoints along the way, which I would say is deja vu. The potential to go with or against the soul, though, is still up to the being.
The rider.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
This is heavy. I just want to say thanks for sharing all this with me. I'm so excited to read this book, truly, because it sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what, if anything, else would you like to share about the book, about the universe's language?
Yeah, I think, the universe doesn't speak English, and everything exists in silence. So if we think about human evolution, if we want to think about human evolution as a stated fact, because that's also controversial in spirituality. I don't know. We'll just say like human evolution. We evolved from not having eyes, right? Eventually, if we go back all the way to the beginning, didn't really have eyes, didn't really have ears, definitely didn't have noses, and a mouth. We existed in a space where we had a sense through intuition.
Okay.
And that is the sixth sense. The hidden sense, the one that's internal, is the essence. The sixth sense is essence.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So in a way, it sort of is our first sense.
Yes. It's the first sense is intuition and essence.
But then as our bodies developed these other abilities, these other senses, it has slowly but surely gone into the background.
Yes.
And what you're saying is that there is nothing to feel or see or taste, but there is the essence to intuit the pathway of the soul.
Into it.
Into it. What?
Into it.
Into it. Right.
INTO.
INT.
Into.
Yeah, into.
IT.
Yeah,
into it. Or in INTO. IT.
Yeah.
Right.
Into it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining. I hope you enjoyed this. Anything else, Drew? Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Drew R the Guru, ARE. And yeah, you can Google me, GROSSMANN. Probably have some upcoming retreats. The book is also written as a 3 to 5 day retreat. So included within the book are over 30 exercises that actually evoke the feeling, bypassing the mind, or at least quelling the mind, satiating it at a certain point to evoke the feeling. So yeah, if I speak one more minute on this.
Sure.
The mind wants to grasp everything, right? Like we think about corporate America, you have to have I'm going to go off for, you have to have I'm not going to say, you have to have a PowerPoint, you have to have a spreadsheet, you got to have something that people can see, like tangibly, it's got to make all this fucking sense. Like, okay, yeah, I'm using my sacred F-bomb. Like that's like an angry one for like just putting it out there. Okay. However, the internalized feeling, like we've said, things come from within, not without. So to evoke the feeling, bypass the mind, get through the body and allow the soul to feel it. Now we can identify it not by definitional strings of symbols, but by just the knowing, just like the rain, we know it. And so these exercises evoke these feelings to not be defined until after they're felt, instead of the other way around. It's like I ask you what love is, and like, oh, I got to define love, where it's like, no, like you feel it, you and me feel it, and let's put a word on that now. Instead of top down, mind, body, soul, let's go soul, body, mind. Let's feel it first. Then then we'll say what it is, and now we'll agree to that. So there's over 30 exercises going from the mind into the body, then to the soul, that lead you down the path. Separate the mind, become the observer, imagine the imagine, like go down further, further, further. Then let's talk about the body, water, food, all the senses, when they develop, why they develop, how they develop. Let's talk about your body. We even touched, like, your body is a thermonuclear reactor. It produces heat and electricity. So you have a magnetic field around you. Depending on that, like, you can affect certain things. Your heart gives off light photons. There are certain things that, and you go deeper and deeper, and the veil starts to become a little bit easier to work with. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. And yes, it is. It is also a retreat, so those exercises we also do work on during those.
Phenomenal, Drew. Drew, thanks so much for coming out, talking with me about all this. It's way over my head, honestly, right now. But I think a little bit of time with the material, and definitely once I read the finished edited book, we should have another round where we go through it, and I'll have a little bit more to say.
Most definitely, Mike. I appreciate the time and you putting your mind, at least, to it. But I feel your soul.
I'm here in body. I'm here in soul.
You're embodied.
I'm embodied.
You're embodied. There's a lot more that came from.
All right.
Or, yeah, atonement is at 1 mint.
At 1 mint.
All right, that one didn't really hit, but
I got you.
Yeah.
Words. The universe does not speak English. Out soon or out now when you're watching this.
Check the link. It'll be in the show notes.
It'll be in the show notes. It'll be
in the show notes.
In the description below.
But really, it's just inside of you.
You don't need to buy anything, but it's nice if you do.
Yeah. At the end of the day, everything, those are my parting words, everything is just a realization and a representation of coming back to yourself. So whether it's wearing crystals on your arms, going to yoga, reading a certain book, saying prayers in the morning or at night, doing all these rituals through religion or just your own practices, everything is just realizing that you are the thing that is continuing to produce all of this stuff. So everything is just one big thought to yourself. Life is just one conversation to yourself. It's just trying to get you back to the present. The mind has imagination. It can move into the future, which causes anxiety, or the past, which causes depression. Everything is only happening in the present moment. So everything is happening now. That's where everything is defined. That's why people love animals. That's why people have pets. That's why everything is happening now. And it's not even happening now in the fact that you're witnessing it through these senses. It's happening now in the fact that your soul is knowing it's happening now. Everything you're seeing through your eyes, through your ears, is happening in the past. What's happening now is the present moment, which is the silence of the knowing. That's why meditation, closing your eyes, you're witnessing the presence of now. That's all I gotta say. That's a mic drop.